In the week leading up to the United States Grand Prix in Austin, the infamous Formula Fandom had a mental breakdown again over George Russell and Max Verstappen. I suppose you wonder how this is possible after such a long time. Well, a certain vile little vermin called Ted Kravitz spilled the beans to promote his silly little book, and dug up that can of worms again. Verstappies are hating on Russell again, and Russell fans are defending him like there's no tomorrow. Thanks, Theodore. We all know what happened in Qatar in 2024 and the aftermath. I'll do a short version to refresh your memory. Max Verstappen had set a brilliant pole time in a season where he was defending his lead in the standings against the quicker McLaren car. He hadn't set a pole for a while, and when he did in Belgium earlier that year, he took a new engine, so he started from further back. During the qualifying in Qatar, there was an instant where George Russell approached Verstappen on a warm-up lap. He made a dramatic wobble and complained over the radio. The race director referred it to the stewards, and they said they'd look at it after the race. Verstappen and Russell walked to the stewards together, having a pleasant conversation. And then in the stewards room, Russell changed into Meryl Streep and acted as if he had to make a choice between his two babies. The stewards then didn't take Max aside, who had explained he drove slowly to not interfere with drivers in front of him, and he received a very unique one-place grid drop. This angered Max to no end, because he believes in fighting hard and fair on track. But these types of games and fake behavior are disgusting to him. He hates that duality. You're either friends who fight on track, or opponents who try to do anything to get an advantage. You can't have both. His fight with Hamilton was way clearer that way. There were very few pleasantries, which is also fine, so he opened up about it to the media, saying in his whole life as a racer he's never seen anyone try as hard as George did to screw someone over into a penalty. He said he lost all respect for Russell after that. He was furious, and he forewarned Russell as well that in the race he'd beat him before the first turn or he'd end up against the wall. Russell had missed those comments, but he obviously heard about them in the week after Qatar. So in Abu Dhabi he was asked about the situation, and he rambled on and on about Max Verstappen and how he wasn't accepting this bullying anymore, and how Max lashes out in bouts of anger, and Masi and Ocon in 2018, and anything he could use to attack Verstappen. Now, Max had already calmed down by then, so he didn't take the bait and said that he had no intention to continue his beef. And that's where the story ended. It fizzled out, and Russell and Verstappen have shared podiums, cool-down rooms, press conferences, etc. together, and even their hiccup in Spain went without any slandering. But then Ted Kravitz crawled out of his hidey hole and ruined things again, like the pest that he is. I moan a lot about Sky Sports F1 because I think they are biased. They slander non-English drivers and actively support English drivers. I rant about Brundle and Crofty and sometimes Anthony Davidson. But the worst one of them all is Ted Kravitz. This guy's distaste for Red Bull and everyone who works for them can be spotted from a mile away. I've seen so many uncomfortable conversations with Christian Horner in the past about whatever he could find to attack him with. Weird, almost passive-aggressive interviews with Max Verstappen, who committed the crime of beating his idol Lewis Hamilton and refused to back down to his leading questions. And always in bad faith. Ted Kravitz had a long rant once about former race director Michael Masi, who attended the Australian Grand Prix as a guest, years after he left his job at the FIA. This caused the Australian to get another big wave of hatred aimed towards him from the tabloid-reading Poms, who adore Kravitz. Then there was the Notebook episode where he painted a picture of a hard-done-by driver who was robbed of a title by an evil young driver. And again, his fans lapped it up, and the hate rekindled again. Max Verstappen boycotted Sky for a weekend over this incident, just to make a point about how these things cause online toxicity. Ted Kravitz caused Red Bull's Hannah Smits and Yuki Tsunoda to receive hate over an incident during the Dutch Grand Prix in 2022. He said Yuki's car stopping was fishy, and he suspected foul play to let Verstappen get a free pit stop. So yeah, that pompous ass has written a book about his adventures in the pit lane. I suppose sales were a little disappointing because all of a sudden a story about Russell and Verstappen emerged. In his book, he describes how he was approached by George Russell with a request. Russell requested that Kravitz ask a follow-up question about Verstappen so he'd have the opportunity to deliver his long anti-Verstappen speech. Ted Kravitz made the decision to fully play along. This is important to note. He wasn't just a journalist asking a question from that moment onwards. He was an accomplice in Russell's sad little ploy from that moment. Making that decision is already a little iffy if you ask me. But I suppose if you want a little scoop, then you should play along. I get that. That's his job after all, and it would be a missed opportunity if he didn't. It's what he did later that pisses me off, and that's why I'm making this video. So, before the US GP, some outlets posted about Ted Kravitz's revelation in his book, and that's when discussions online started again. Obviously, I want to get it out there how I feel about it. First of all, I despised Russell at the time for doing what he did. There's nothing cool about acting up in a steward's room to screw someone over into a penalty. His fans say that Verstappen snitches on drivers too, but that's always in the context of the car. For instance, when he slowed down a little for a double yellow flag, he specifically kept an eye on the delta with Norris, who was following him, to see if he also did it. When he noticed Norris hadn't slowed down, he notified GP and the stewards did their job. That's completely different from creating a weird situation, walking to the stewards while friendly chatting, and then completely flipping personalities. I made a video about that too at the time. The show he tried to create with Ted Kravitz is also pretty lame, but Russell is the eager school kid in front of the class, aiming to please the teacher. That's just who he is. Max didn't let it bother him and he wisely kept his mouth shut. And things passed. But this was ages ago and I find George Russell a completely different driver now. I'm pretty impressed with him this season. I think he's the best driver out there after Verstappen. 2 wins, a bunch of podiums, and consistently in the top 5 with a pretty shitty car. He held talks with Toto Wolff about his new contract, and even if the details aren't clear, I think he made a good deal for himself. A juicy pay rise, no doubt, fewer marketing duties, and a +1. So technically a multi-year deal. Yeah, good going, mate. Therefore, I wasn't happy with the hate he started getting again from the Verstappen fans. I thought the discussions about that old situation were unnecessary and I blame Ted Kravitz for it. That's the second thing I want to get off my chest. If he were a trustworthy journalist, he'd have kept that bit of information for himself. He was an accomplice in that story anyway. So I think it's just a shitty thing to do, to throw someone under the bus after working with him on that very thing. I can just hear that smarmy voice oozing with contempt, eager to spill the tea, all proud of the gossip he has. If I were George Russell, I'd never answer a single question properly again. Just the bare minimum. It's clear he just can't be trusted, even if he plays along. So that's my beef with Ted Kravitz, on top of the long list I already had. Ted Kravitz is a pest to Formula 1, and I hope somebody will do something about it very soon. Let me know how you feel about this situation. Should journalists spill the beans for their own gain like that? Are you still angry with Russell or Verstappen? Are you gonna subscribe? Take care now. Doei doei.